2 hours ago, the Washington Post published a report that changes the nature of the question being asked about this war. For 30 days, the question has been how long the air campaign continues. That question has now been replaced by a different one. When do American boots land on Iranian soil? The Post, citing multiple U.S. officials who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss highly sensitive military plans, reported that the Pentagon has been preparing for weeks of ground operations inside Iran. The plans, which have been in development for weeks, not days, are not theoretical contingencies. They are war-gamed scenarios with identified objectives, assigned forces, and estimated timelines. The objectives under consideration include raids on Kharg Island, Iran's primary oil export hub, through which 90% of its crude oil flows. Or they include raids on Iranian coastal military installations near the Strait of Hormuz to find and destroy weapon systems capable of targeting commercial and military shipping. And according to Axios, they include search and recover missions targeting approximately 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium that disappeared after U.S.-Israeli strikes on nuclear facilities. A former senior defense official with direct knowledge of the plans told the Post, "We've looked at this. It's been war-gamed. This is not last-minute planning." Secretary of State Rubio said Friday, one day before this report published, that the U.S. can achieve all of our objectives without ground troops and expects the war to conclude in weeks, not months. Both statements may be simultaneously true, or neither may be. The planning exists regardless. Kharg Island, 9 square miles that control Iran's treasury. Kharg Island is 9 square miles of coral in the northern Persian Gulf, roughly 25 kilometers off the Iranian coast. It is the most economically critical single piece of territory in the Iranian state. 90% of Iran's oil exports flow through its loading terminals. It is functionally Iran's treasury. The U.S. military has already struck Kharg once. On March 13th, CENTCOM confirmed 90 targets hit on the island, including naval mine storage facilities and missile storage bunkers. Joint Chiefs Chairman General Kane confirmed the strike. Iran said oil exports continued normally. The question of whether to seize Kharg rather than strike it has been debated within the administration since the war began, according to multiple reporting streams. And the strategic logic is compelling. Controlling Kharg removes Iran's primary source of war-sustaining revenue without requiring control of the strait itself. It creates a negotiating asset, return Kharg, when Iran opens the strait that no amount of bombing can replicate. The risk assessment is equally compelling in the other direction. Michael Eisenstadt, Director of Military and Security Studies at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and a retired Army officer who served in Iraq, Israel, and Jordan, was blunt. "I just wouldn't want to be in that small place with Iran's ability to rain down drones and maybe artillery." Seizing the island is not the hard part, officials told the Post. Holding it is. Kharg is 25 kilometers from an Iranian coast that can reach it with every weapon system Tehran has deployed in this conflict. Drones, ballistic missiles, coastal artillery, fast boats, and submarine-launched torpedoes. A U.S. ground force on Kharg would be a static target in a target-rich Iranian firing environment, with supply lines running through water that Iran controls. Senator Lindsey Graham has called for seizing Kharg anyway, comparing the operation to the 1945 Battle of Iwo Jima. He said, "We did Iwo Jima. We can do this. My money's always on the Marines." The Battle of Iwo Jima killed 6,800 Americans. The comparison did not reassure the lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who condemned it. At the coastal raids and the 440 kilograms of enriched uranium, the other target category in the Washington Post report, Iranian coastal military sites near the Strait of Hormuz describes a different kind of operation with different risks and different strategic logic. The Strait of Hormuz is 50 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. Iran has spent decades turning its southern coastline into a layerful anti-access area denial network. Radar arrays, anti-ship cruise missile batteries, fast boat pens, drone launch sites, and mine-laying vessel berths. The U.S. air campaign has struck many of these installations, but the coastal terrain, rocky hills, tunnels, concealed positions, provides Iranian forces with the same natural advantage that has frustrated every foreign military that has tried to suppress coastal defense networks from the air. A ground raid, special operations forces moving quickly into coastal sites, destroying specific weapons systems, and withdrawing before Iranian reinforcements arrive, could accomplish in hours what weeks of airstrikes have not. The permanent removal of specific capabilities rather than their temporary degradation. The risk is that Iranian ground forces are home. U.S. special operations teams would be operating in Iranian territory under Iranian air and artillery cover, dependent on helicopter extraction in a zone Iran has been actively targeting with its own aircraft and drones. The Post noted that such missions would expose U.S. personnel to Iranian drones and missiles, ground fire, and improvised explosives. That list is not theoretical. It is a description of what Iran has already demonstrated it can do to foreign forces in this conflict. The third objective, securing highly enriched uranium, is the most operationally complex and the most strategically significant. Axios reported that the U.S. military has prepared plans for ground operations deep inside Iran's interior to secure the approximately 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium that became unaccounted for after last year's midnight hammer strikes. That material is enough, if further processed, to produce multiple nuclear weapons. Its location is uncertain. Its security in a country being bombed around the clock is not guaranteed. And its recovery would require U.S. forces to penetrate not the coastline, but the Iranian interior, a fundamentally different operation from a coastal raid. Maximum optionality. The phrase that explains everything, the political architecture surrounding the planning, is identical to the pattern that has characterized every escalation in this war. Official denial, followed by deployment, followed by confirmation. Trump told reporters on March 20th, "I'm not putting troops anywhere. If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you, but I'm not putting troops." The 82nd Airborne received deployment orders March 25th. The USS Tripoli arrived with 3,500 Marines on March 27th. White House Press Secretary Leavitt, asked about the Washington Post report, and said, "It's the job of the Pentagon to make preparations in order to give the Commander-in-Chief maximum optionality. It does not mean the President has made a decision." That framing, maximum optionality, is the most precise official description yet of what the accumulating forces, the war-gamed plans, and the published report actually represent. The President has not decided. The military is positioned to execute within hours of a decision. Every asset that would be needed for a Kharg Island raid or a Hormuz coastal operation is either already in theater or en route. At Iran's parliament speaker, Ghalibaf responded to the ground operations, reporting with language that has been consistent since the war began. "They do not realize that our people are waiting for the arrival of American troops on the ground to burn them and punish their regional partners forever. Iran's Navy chief warned that the USS Abraham Lincoln would be targeted if it entered firing range. An AP poll found 62% of Americans strongly oppose the use of ground troops in Iran. 12% are in favor. The 82nd Airborne is in the region. 3 MEAs have arrived or are arriving. The plans are war-gamed and ready, and the man who has to decide has said, on the record, that he is not putting troops anywhere, while also saying, on the record, that if he were, he certainly wouldn't tell you. 2 hours ago, this was a classified conversation between military planners. Now, it is a Washington Post report with named officials, estimated timelines, and specific targets. The war that was supposed to last 4 weeks is entering its 5th, and the question that began as whether the US would bomb Iran has become whether American soldiers will land on Iranian soil, and what happens to the soldiers, the region, and the global energy supply when they do.